In order to create a new product on your ThriveCart account, you're going to come from this main dashboard here, and you're going to come click into your products tab. So that's this one, the second one from the left here. And what I typically recommend when creating a product, if you are brand new to ThriveCart and you don't already have an existing product, you can just go right here and click create product. But if you already do have products created, or perhaps this can be your protocol after you've created your first product, using the checkout page template that we'll be providing for you going forward, your way of always making sure that you're keeping that consistency and not having to reinvent the wheel every single time you create a new product is going to be by coming and duplicating that existing product. But for the sake of this particular exercise, I'm going to go ahead and create one brand new just so I can walk you through every single step and so that you're equipped when you are creating your first product. So what you're going to do is determine whether it's a digital or physical product. Typically we're selling digital products, so we're going to go ahead with that example today. So click into create that new product. And this is what you're going to be seeing. So we're going to work through each of these steps. Each time you click next, it's going to take you through each of these little subheadings here, and we're just going to fill out all this information together. So for the sake of this example, I'm just calling this a sample product. And you can see that my page URL is automatically pre-populated by the content that I put up here in the name. Also got an option to title this project something a little bit more internally. So for example, sample product might be what the client sees or the customer sees on the checkout page and on their invoice and receipt, but maybe we need something internal to just kind of determine what exactly this is so that you can differentiate between your different products. So let's call this course plus handout, let's say. And then that way we know exactly what it is that we're delivering. What's really cool about ThriveCart, and I really appreciate, is that you actually have the option to change the language of your cart so that your customer's experience is completely catered to them based on where they are in the world. We've got some other really cool options that we can change around in order to accommodate if you are working internationally. Just so you know, you are able to toggle this on here. So right now the product is in test mode, and until we actually go and publish this, it's going to remain in test mode. You can keep it in test mode if you want to kind of test the checkout process and things like that. But I'm not really afraid to publish that right into live mode, because ultimately the links that you generate here are quite unique, and people aren't going to just find them when they're browsing the internet, only going to find them if you've provided that link for them. So I would just say don't be afraid to pop out of test mode and into live mode once you're creating your products. Once you are happy with all these options here, you can go ahead and click next, and then it's going to bring you to your pricing page here. So another really cool feature of ThriveCart that helps a lot for businesses who serve an international audience is that you're actually able to completely choose which currency you want to sell in. So any of the currencies here are available to sell in. And so we've got this option here. You can pick and choose what currency you want to use. You also have some pricing options that you can set up for your product. You need to set up one product price. So either way, you're going to be selecting this, but you've got some options as well for kind of creating, a subscription, if that makes sense for you, split pay. So kind of breaking that down into different payments. There is a max of 6 monthly payments when you do split pay. Anything more than that, you would need to do a little bit of a workaround and set up as a subscription. And there's also a pay your own price option as well, where your customer gets to actually choose how much they want to pay. It's a kind of like a donation based good faith kind of pricing there. For the sake of this exercise, let's just set up a one-time fee. Let's say that your product is $1,000, and you can pick and choose if there's a limited quantity of this particular product available. Because we're doing a digital product today, I'm going to say no, set to unlimited. But of course, if you're working with a physical product or perhaps a limited edition digital product, you can absolutely set a maximum quantity. You do also have the option to set a trial period as well. Perhaps if you're offering some sort of a digital product that people want to dip their toes into before committing to, you do have that option here. But I'm going to leave it with no trial period, a one-time fee of $1,000. You can see that the currency that I've left it on, is USD. So it's telling me that your customer will be charged 1,000 USD immediately. So really nice and clear, no room for confusion for what your customer is going to be paying. We set up these pricing options. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. You also have the option to modify this particular pricing option, and this will show up on your checkout page, on your cart page. So you can choose to just rephrase this if something feels more clear for you or your customer. Like, this is one-time payment, but you can also change this to pay in full. And you can even opt to remove this or just tweak the wording. This is really totally up to you and whatever you think is going to be the most clear for your customer to understand. And then you have the option here to allow a singular purchase or multiple purchases at once. So if you're selling a course, let's say for $1,000, one purchase at a time probably makes the most sense, because nobody's going to need to purchase more than one the same course. But if this is something different, perhaps this is, an add-on bundle of hours or something like that, and people perhaps want to purchase more than just what you've outlined in your product at any given time, that would then make sense for you to allow them to purchase multiple at the same time. Again, for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to leave it at only one purchase at a time, because like I said, this is a course and nobody needs to purchase 2 different access points to the same course. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. So once you've created your singular pricing option, or essentially created a price point for this particular product, you do have a couple of options here. So like I showed you earlier, you can always click add pricing option here, and you have the option to select a one-time fee, a subscription, which can go on, indefinitely, split pay, which can go from 2 to 6 months, or pay your own price. And so here's where you kind of have to make a choice. ThriveCart has the option to have native in-house payment plans, and they work really, really well. Your customer has the option to actually pick and choose which payment plan they want to be on. It gives a lot of payment flexibility. But one thing I will say is that depending on the price of your product, and if you want people to have a little bit more flexibility with their payment plan, or if you plan on offering large discounts for your product, there might be another payment option that might make a little bit more sense for you. And we're going to get a little deeper into that when we talk about building out your checkout page. But one thing that I will share at this stage in the game is, if you do want to do a split pay, let's say we're doing 4 payments of $250. So this is, you can pick and choose your pricing here. If you want to charge slightly higher for a payment plan, you absolutely can. For the sake of this exercise, I'm just splitting my $1,000 price point into 4 separate payments. These will automatically rebill every month. So they will pay today, the day that they purchased the product, they're going to pay $250. And then every month to follow, they're going to pay that other $250 until they've made the full price of $1,000. And if you're not totally sure, just read this little text here. This explains exactly how it's going to be broken down. So your customer will be charged $250 immediately, and then $250 every month for the next 3 months. So it just makes it super crystal clear, no room for confusion there. I always like to check this little box here that just sends on the recurring payment as well, just so that every time we bill their card, they're receiving a payment notification. This is optional. This, truth be told, can confuse people, and sometimes people will wonder if they've purchased something new, even if that's not the case. But just for transparency's sake, I really like to make sure I'm sending that recurring payment email, just so that they know that their card is being charged. And so one important thing to mention here is, for a product of $1,000, for example, and let's say I've created this split pay of 4 payments of $250. It's really important to note that if you're going to be offering coupons, large coupons, let's say a coupon of 50% off, or, $250 off, let's say, it's important to know that when you're using this particular method to split payments using ThriveCart's in-house native software for split pay, any coupons that your customer use will actually be taken off of that very first purchase. So here how it says, your customer will be charged $250 immediately, and then $250 for the next 3 months. If you had a coupon of $200 off, your customer today will actually only be paying $50. And so it's important to consider if you have overhead, if you have any costs that you need to inject into this particular customer before their payment plan is done, you just want to make sure that you're picking a payment plan and thinking in advance what kind of coupons you'll be offering to just make sure that your overhead costs are covered with that first payment. So as to reiterate, it really depends on the price of your product. It depends on what type of split pay you want to offer. And it depends on if you're going to be issuing coupons and how large those coupons are going to be. Those are all elements that you can take into consideration when you're choosing to use ThriveCart's split pay function or opt for one of the options that you have available to you right on your checkout page. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. I'm going to keep this here for now. Again, you can totally modify this. You can switch this to say monthly payments if you think that's going to be a little bit more clear to your people. You've got a character limit here, but you can essentially explain this in whatever way makes sense so that your people totally understand. You can always modify this in the future too if you do find that you have people asking questions. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. And as a reminder, you can add as many pricing options as you want. You want your customers to be able to choose, maybe a 2 months, monthly payment, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, right up to 6 months. 6 months is the limit. You can't issue a split pay for that spans longer than 6 months without turning it into a subscription. But that's perhaps a lesson for another day. So if you're happy with your pricing options, you can go ahead and move on to the next section. We have the option here to calculate sales tax. This is probably my favorite thing about ThriveCart because it's really hard to find cart software, any sort of e-commerce type of software that actually generates location-based tax. So I really, really appreciate this feature of ThriveCart. If you want to take advantage of this when you're selling to your customers, you can just go ahead and check this little box here. This is our only option, ThriveCart simple sales tax. Basically, it's just a super general tax generator that takes into account the address and location of your customer and then in real time determines what that price point is going to be for them depending on where they live. And so you do have to be selective when you're coming into here. Make sure that you are selecting a category that best fits what your offer is, but you also do need to keep in mind that depending on which item that you choose from this list, ThriveCart might not actually end up charging tax that you're looking for depending on the one you've chosen. So it takes a little bit of guess and check. And when you're, running and testing your product, you'll be able to see if it's generating tax the way that you want it to. So most important is that you're selecting something that actually really represents what it is that you're selling, but of course running that test and making sure that the correct tax is being applied before you go ahead and launch this to your customer list. So I'm actually going to go ahead and choose under the other category, services and taxable, because I know that my course, although it's a self-paced program, it is still a service that I'm delivering. There's still some one-on-one touch points and things like that. And so I do really want to frame it as a service. And I know with my own experience that if I set it as a service, as opposed to a digital product of some sort, this is going to generate the location-based tax that I'm looking for specifically. And so for me in that particular instance, that is having provincial-based tax based on certain provinces in Canada. That means not charging tax to customers and residents of the United States, not charging VAT or certain other taxable items if I have customers coming from Europe, for example. So this is the product category that I'm going to move forward with. I'm going to go ahead and click next, and I'm going to just check off these boxes. So do not collect sales tax in your local country. I'm going to leave that unchecked because I absolutely do want to collect sales tax in my local country. I don't want to collect tax in Europe or the UK, in Mexico or in Chile because I don't pay taxes in those particular countries. But depending on your status, where you live and where you pay taxes, just make sure that you're checking these boxes off accordingly. You can hover over these little icons here to just read a little bit more about this particular piece of information and make a decision that feels right for you. And when you're ready, you go ahead and click next. Next, you'll be required to input your address. You definitely need to make sure that this is your actual real address and is reflective of where you actually pay taxes, because that is going to help the ThriveCart simple tax generator to generate the type of tax that your customers are meant to be paying based on where you are and where you pay tax. And so when you've entered your address in here, go ahead and click Save Sales Tax Settings. Lastly, on this page, you have the option to customize your customer's payment notification. So this is totally optional. If you don't opt to do this, they'll just get a general ThriveCart receipt, purchase confirmation type email automatically. But you do have the option to customize it, and I always really like to customize those types of things. Again, totally optional, but if you do decide that you would like to customize your payment notification, you can check the box there and then pick either detailed or basic. I would like to go with detailed because I like to add a little bit of information on here. So first and foremost, you can upload your logo using this button here, and you can also modify the colors for your primary accent color. So that's going to be this line here, this button here, some of this type of text here, background of the invoice itself, and your text should you wish to. I always really like to include a little bit of text that says, thanks for your purchase. Give them a little bit of an instruction. Click the link below to access your purchases, for example. I always like to include a little disclaimer here that this is actually their receipt for tax purposes. Sometimes people will follow up afterwards looking for that receipt. So I really like to make this super nice and clear right on the invoice and just let them know that this is actually how they can go and download that receipt. Ideally, they would have already downloaded their receipt because they will see that on the success page, which we will talk about when we move on to designing the checkout page. But I just like to make sure that this is here just in case they didn't download it the first time around. They have the opportunity to do that now. And I'm just going to change this a little bit so that I've got a little bit of kind of a hierarchy to the font that I'm using here. So you can style this how you like. You don't have a ton of design or style options, but you do have a couple things that you can do in terms of sizing, bold, italicized, anything like that, changing your accent color type thing. And so you've got the option to add a little bit of text up here, and then you've got a little option as well to add some bottom text. So for example, if I wanted to put this at the bottom instead of at the top, I've got that choice here. And so these are the two kind of sections that you can modify. Everything else stays more or less the same. All of this information is pre-populated by the product that they select and purchase, as well as the information that they plug in when they're actually checking out. This will always be your company's information showing up here. It's really important that you make sure that you toggle this particular setting on in your general settings of your ThriveCart account, because this preview isn't necessarily a good representation of what your customer is actually seeing. Like I said, this is a setting in your general settings. If you haven't seen how to do that yet, you can reference the previous video. That will show you just how you can toggle this on to make sure that your business details are being shown on this invoice or receipts. So when you're all done, you can go ahead and click Save. And once you're happy with all of the settings that you have available here to you in the pricing section, you can go ahead and click Next to move on to your next section. So this is an order bump section. This is one of the features of ThriveCart that you can use to make a couple extra bucks on each of your sales. We're not going to dive too deep into this particular lesson. This is definitely a lesson for another day, but order bumps are basically things that you can use to, they're upsells or add-ons that you can kind of tack on to any particular purchase. And ideally, these bump offers aren't random. They're something that's really complementary to the base product that this customer is already interested in. And ideally is something that, doesn't cost more than 50 bucks, let's say, and just kind of enhances their experience, making an extra sale for you. Ideally provides them with something of value that is somewhat in the same realm of interest of the base product that they're purchasing. Once you're done with your bump offers, or if you opt to, like me today, skip your bump offer, you can just go ahead and click Next. And from here, you just need to activate your payment processors that you want to use for this particular product. So if you've already connected your payment processing account, perhaps a Stripe or a PayPal, it's really easy to just simply click activate to actually activate them right here on this particular product. I always recommend going for Stripe Enhanced versus Stripe Legacy because you just have so many more features to choose from, most important of which being the buy now, pay later options that I wanted to talk more about when we get into your checkout page. These options are really great if any of the reasons I kind of described to you when we were talking about payment and pricing options might seem problematic for you. Perhaps you're offering really large coupons. Perhaps you want to span that over a longer payment period. Perhaps you have a large overhead cost when starting this, and so it's not ideal for you to use the native ThriveCart payment pricing options. Buy now, pay later is a really, really awesome option that you can use, and it's something that you've probably seen when you're online shopping as well. So it's third-party platforms that aren't necessarily directly related to your business, but of course you will receive that payout account that your customer sets up is through those buy now, pay later organizations. You still get paid out in full, then they can work out their financing options specifically with those third-party organizations. And so for that reason, I always recommend going with Stripe Enhanced because you want to make sure that you're getting all of those possible features. If you've already connected your Stripe account, you'll just simply select it from the list here and then go ahead and click save. If you haven't already connected your payment processor, make sure to check out the video that I have that's specifically about how to connect your payment processor to your ThriveCart account. You will actually be able to do that right here from this screen if you haven't already connected your payment processor. So make sure you check out that video. Make sure that you have at least one payment processor activated on every product. You won't actually be able to publish the product as live until you have a payment processor connected to it. So once you've picked your payment processor, you're going to go ahead and click next. And that takes you to the affiliate screen. So again, this is a topic for another day. You are actually able to have affiliates promote your products for you. And you have a whole affiliate dashboard where you can actually set up those payouts, how frequently they come, things like that. You can even create an affiliate dashboard where your affiliates can pick and choose which products they want to promote on your behalf. ThriveCart is really known for their affiliate software. So this is definitely something that I recommend digging into as you get more familiar with this platform, because ultimately, if you can have other people promoting your products, why not? It's a really great way to kind of engage your community, keep them loyal to your offers, and make sure that you're getting more eyes on products and ideally more customers coming through that door. So again, this is for another day. But if you wanted to pop in here and modify those affiliate settings, you just check this box here, and then you can just tweak all the settings as needed. I'm going to go ahead and click next to move on to the next tab here. So that was all of our product settings. And now we're moving on to the fulfillment tab. This page is all about how your product actually lands in the hands of the customer who purchased it. So you'll find all the settings that you need to right here in this fulfillment tab. So first and foremost, you always need to add a support email address that people can reach out to if they are needing support. If you can recall, back when we designed the customer payment notice, there was 3 buttons at the bottom: access your purchases, download your receipt, and also contact support. And so basically that's the email address that is going to show up when people click that button to contact support if they're needing any sort of support with their purchases. So this can just be your regular email. If you have a support email specifically for this type of product or course, you can plug that in here. But ultimately, you just need to have some sort of an email address here so that that button on the payment notification is pre-populated with something valuable. And so now you have the option to choose what happens after their purchase. So you've got 3 options here. You can either display their total / their invoice. You can send them to a URL. Perhaps you have an external queue page or a page that you need to send them to in between they've made this purchase and when they're actually going to use the product. Your second option there, which of course would require you having your own third-party website or a particular link that you can send them to. And then last but not least, you do have the option to add them to my membership site. And because the sample product that I'm creating today is a course that I have created right here on ThriveCart Learn, this is the option that I'm going to select. And you can see once you do select it, you actually get a couple of different options here. So first and foremost, the membership platform. I know the wording here is a little bit unclear, but the membership platform that we're referring to is in fact ThriveCart Learn. So just right here where we set up that test course earlier, you have the option to grant access to a different access to your course or product, depending on what their price point was, or you have the option to just keep it the same for all pricing options. So for the sake of this example, I'll keep it the same for all pricing options, but you do have the option to go different, and then you can pick and choose your settings here based on what people paid and what you want them to have access to. You're going to select from your list of courses from ThriveCart Learn here, which course you want them to be added to. So for this particular example, this is going to be my test course. And then lastly, you also have some options here that you can include some tags, perhaps saying just sample course, adding a couple of tags here if you're going to use ThriveCart in that way, kind of segment your user behavior based on what they've purchased. You have another optional section here. You can still send them to another page after. If you recall up here, we had the option to send them to a URL. If you do choose to add them to your membership site, aka add them right directly to the course, you do still have the option to view a success page before accessing the course if that's something that you want. But again, it's optional. So if you don't have anything in particular to include here, that's totally fine. This checkbox, I don't know what this is personally. This is not something that I've ever used. So I don't think that you'll need to check this off unless you plan on sending a physical CD or a DVD to your customers. This is not going to be something that applies to you. But when you're done with the fulfillment information, you can go ahead and click next. And then we're moving on to a big important step, which is actually your checkout page. So this is the page that your customer will actually see, and ideally will be that last touch point where you really push and sell to them before they actually go ahead and plug in their payment details and click buy. So you've got a whole gallery of templates here, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of kind of rhyme and reason as to why we choose certain types of templates. Before that, I'll give you a bit of a high level look at what these different templates can be. So first of all, you've got embeddable templates here, which means that if you have your own website and you just, you want to style all the sections and everything on your website, but you just want the payment portion to be embedded, this is going to be your best bet here, because you're literally just taking out the actual checkout functionality and embedding that right on your landing or sales page that you've created on your website. So this is a really great option for you if you're quite tech savvy, you've got somebody on your team who can support with these types of things. This does mean that you'll just have to play with a little bit of HTML code and plug that into your website. If that's something that you're comfortable doing, great, because it does mean that you have full design control on that particular sales page that you're going to be creating, and you're just really simply embedding this checkout function here, meaning that you can process payments even if your website, for example, doesn't have an e-commerce setup. This is something that is a great option if you're going to be building out your sales page on your own website. Similar to the embeddable options here, this is a modal checkout. And so essentially this is actually a pop-up. And so again, this only works if you have your own website, created a full in-depth sales page, and instead of embedding that checkout functionality right on that sales page, you want somebody to be able to click a button or a link and then have this pop up as a checkout pop-up window. Again, these options here are only available if you have your own website, have your sales page on there, and you wish to have this all take place on your website instead of bringing them over to a ThriveCart kind of checkout page. Any of these options here are all native to ThriveCart. So if you create one of these templates as your option, as you're done with it, it's going to generate a URL. So that's going to be a custom URL. That's like, thrivecart.com/ whatever your company name is. You do have some options for customizing that URL slightly, but it's never going to be the exact same URL that you use for your website, of course, because this will be a ThriveCart page as opposed to either of these, which would actually live directly on your website. So that's kind of like an overarching choice that you can make. Next, I also want to talk about the concept of single step or multi-step pages. And that will make a little bit more sense once we open up one of these templates. But basically, you've got the option on ThriveCart to set it up so that it either has all the information that they need to enter all on one page, or it's split into two different pages. So they enter their personal details on page number 1, and then they click next and then enter their payment details on page 2. And so ultimately it's going to be your choice based on what you think your customer user experience is looking for. But our recommendation is to go with the single page, specifically because those payment plan options, if you're not using the ThriveCart in-house payment plan options and you're opting for the buy now, pay later options through Affirm, Afterpay, or Klarna, customer isn't going to know that that's an option until they make it to page 2, which means if they're not liking that total price point, and perhaps, they're not aware yet that they actually can pay using a buy now, pay later type of third-party integration, you might lose them. And so I really recommend to have that all on one page so that before they feel committed entering their name and their email address, perhaps their address, they can see at least that there's pricing options that do suit them. So you've got the option to select any of these. So let's say I went with a page like this one, for example. You open this up. All of the templates are really beautiful. You have the option to customize them quite a bit. Basically just need to click into each of your sections here. And then all of your editing settings are going to be off to the side. So if you want to modify your background color, you can do that here. If you want to modify your text, got font options here, text color, font sizing, line height, letter spacing, casing, anything you could think of. You just are ultimately clicking into your elements and modifying them. So this button, for example, full width or perhaps standard. Again, you can change the color, you can change the border radius. You can make any sort of changes that you need in order for this checkout page to match really seamlessly with your branding or really seamlessly with your website. If you have an existing website that is linking to this checkout page, you want to make sure that the process is as seamless as possible. So just scroll through. There's so many different things that you can change. The most important thing is to just click on all of these elements and just scroll through that left sidebar to see what the different options are here. So for example, when I click on contact information, I really want to make sure that I'm actually collecting the customer first and last name. When I click on my pricing options, I do really want to show the option that there's buy now, pay later type stuff. Perhaps I want to update the coloring here so that it matches my own branding. There's a lot of different options here. You have some options here to take advantage of that multi-step like we talked about, or keeping it single step like we recommend. You have the option to switch your sidebar position if you want to change that around. Any changes that you make here, you just want to make sure that you're saving, and you also want to make sure that you're popping onto mobile to just double check that everything looks okay. Unfortunately, on ThriveCart, there's not too much that you can actually change on mobile. If something looks funny on mobile, you can just consider coming back over to desktop and perhaps switching the order of it or rearranging it or spacing it out in a way that will reflect nicely onto mobile. It's important too that when you're here, you're also styling not only your cart page, but your success. Depending on the fulfillment option that you selected, people can be redirected to that success page. So you just want to make sure that you're styling it. It doesn't take long. Super simple success page. And so if you're not sure if your fulfillment option that you have selected is going to take them to the success page, I recommend just styling it just to be safe. Make sure that your customer is always getting an intentional and branded touch point, no matter where they are in their journey of becoming one of your customers. So clicking over to that success page, you can make any sort of updates and changes here. What's really nice about this success page is it automatically pre-populates with whatever that purchase link, that purchase fulfillment link is that you've set up, as well as the option to download a PDF copy of their invoice or receipt. Before you leave, it's always important to save your changes. And then when you're ready to leave, you can go ahead and click exit. It'll always prompt you to kind of save your changes again or exit without saving. I like to just be safe and click save changes before I X out of here. So we covered how to select and modify a checkout page template directly from ThriveCart, but another thing I'd really like to show you is how to actually import a ThriveCart checkout page template that could have been designed for you elsewhere. So somebody else created this template for you, but it feels like a good fit for what you need to offer. I just want to show you how you can actually go and use that on your particular product. If you decide that you'd like to use an existing ThriveCart checkout template, which we will be providing for you, I'm going to go about it a little bit differently. You're still going to go to click Browse Gallery. And instead of selecting one here from your ThriveCart library, you're going to go to My Templates. And you're going to click Import Design. Here is where you're going to plug in that particular link that has been shared with you for that particular template. The only part that's changing is this little number and letter code right here. But once you've plugged in that link, you can go ahead and click Continue. It'll give you a little bit of a preview here. Sometimes I find that the image preview here isn't actually representative of what the template itself looks like. I think it needs a little bit of time to kind of reset. Either way, you go ahead and click import this design. You can see it's kind of letting you know where it is in that particular process. And then when it's ready, it's going to open up that template for you. So like I said, sometimes the preview doesn't look exactly the way that the actual template is supposed to look, or perhaps it doesn't look the way that you were made to believe before importing it. Go ahead and click import anyways. You don't really have anything to lose. If you don't like it, you can just simply exit. Once you have plugged in that link and clicked import, you're going to get the template that's been pre-designed for you. Just gives you a little bit of a leg up when you're getting started here. So you might have a little to do in terms of copy or plugging pieces in. I did want to just walk you through how to modify this particular template. You're just going to have to click into all of the elements, just like we talked about earlier. If you want to switch out an image, you just simply click on the image here. If you want to modify text, you're just going to highlight text type. You can duplicate any of these text boxes, elements, things like that, should you wish to add in, a subheading or slightly different copy structure. This particular template as well has a couple of decorations that you can choose to toggle on or off depending on the style of your business. You also have the option to modify the colors, some of the placement of some of those elements, as well as opting to just turn certain ones on or off. So you've got a couple of different options here when it comes to styling. These are all testimonial widgets, and so you can plug in testimonials of your happy customers, input, their name. Photo is optional. If you don't want to share photos of your clients, you can opt to input your logo here, or something that you can also consider as well if this doesn't feel like a fit for you. This has been selected right here from the testimonials section. ThriveCart has a lot of pre-built sections that you can kind of choose from. You just pick and choose the design style that feels good for you. They've got a lot of cool different options here depending on what you're looking for. But if this doesn't match your particular needs and you want to create something more or less from scratch, you can just pick that from the elements bar here, where you can just go and, for example, maybe instead of actually using a testimonial widget, I can just type my testimonial, something like this, and add a client name. Here, again, you've got a lot of options when it comes to text sizing, bold, italicized, things like that. If this doesn't feel like a fit for you using this particular functionality, you can always opt to delete that and just go for your own type of text box here. So those are all options for you. This particular section has already been styled based on what we kind of recommend having. So a couple of points about what is actually included in the product that you're offering. I also really like to see this particular sidebar on the left side because I find it makes a little bit more sense when you come onto mobile. They're able to see the product name, the price, what to expect before they start entering all of their payment information. So that's just a personal preference of mine and how this particular template has been styled to reflect that. And, you know, depending on how you set up your product, you might not see all of these options here. And so it's important to note that you can't add a coupon box or you can't add a pricing option box. These types of elements only show up when you've added those things to the back end of your ThriveCart. So once you created coupons on ThriveCart, this section will show up. Once you've added a pricing option, ThriveCart, when you're setting up this particular product, this option box right here will show up. If you don't have these elements, they're not going to show up on your checkout page. And it's also important to note that if you didn't have these elements when you styled your checkout page, it's important to come back and make sure that the style of your checkout page still looks good, even after you've activated these elements, because this I have branded because I had the option to. I already have coupons created. I did opt to go for a pricing option. But if you add these things in later, they're not by default going to have your brand colors. They're going to have those default ThriveCart colors. So it's important to just come on here, modify fonts, modify colors, modify the wording that you see after you've added those pieces into your ThriveCart account. And so, like I said, if you add these in later, just make sure you're popping back on to your checkout page to make sure that it's always looking good that time. And so again, these are those buy now, pay later options. And what I like about opting for the single page checkout as opposed to the multi-step, for example, is that your customer can see these payment options right off the bat. And so if we choose to go with buy now, pay later, we're not actually going to have this pricing option window here, which means then that this is going to just be bumped up a little bit higher. So if you choose to kind of prioritize this type of payment because you feel like the ThriveCart in-house payment plans aren't a fit for you, customers are always going to have this. They're going to have this as an option either way. It's really nice to be able to pick a checkout page option that highlights that for them within first glance without them having to navigate to a new page and commit to entering some of that personal information. You have your buttons as well. You can just simply double click on if you want to change any of the text. You can simply, oops, it likes to scroll, but you can simply swap this out for like purchase now, let's say, make any sort of changes that you want here. And again, before you're totally done and ready to walk away from it, always take a peek on mobile and always just take a peek at that success page as well. Make sure that that's been styled to your liking. And as usual, when you're done, you're going to go ahead, click Save Changes and exit. Now that you're all done with your checkout tab here, there is more that you can get into specifically when it comes to tracking. If you've got, pixels and things like that, you can definitely make sure that you are incorporating those here. We'll dive into those in another video. If you're happy with the design of your checkout page and you're kind of feeling ready to share that with the world, go ahead and click Next. Your very last step on the product setup end is going to be behavior rules. This is if you're using ThriveCart in a really intentional way, it's going to be a really great feature for you. But if you're new to ThriveCart and you just want to start making some sales, you don't need to set up any behavior rules at this time. This is not a mandatory element of your product setup. We'll get into that on another day. But what you're going to do finally, now that you have filled out all of these different tabs on your product settings, is click Save and Get URL. And what I always like to do every time I create my new ThriveCart checkout page is just click here to view checkout so that I can actually see the page live and make sure that I'm happy with all the tweaks and changes that I've made, actually just see what it's going to look like for your particular customer. So once you're happy with the way that your checkout looks on the live version, you can go ahead and click copy URL. And this particular URL, you're going to paste into your sales pages. You can put it on your link in bio page. You can send this directly to customers. If you've had conversations and they've expressed an interest in your product, this is the link that people are going to use to purchase this particular product. So make sure you keep this link handy. It's really easy to come back to time and time again in the future. You can always just come back to your products page and you always have that option right here to click Get URL. Once you're totally happy with your product and you've tested it and you're ready to move forward, you can go ahead and switch that over to publish mode and get that out of test mode by clicking into edit your product settings and then just simply swapping that over to live. Go ahead and click save and get URL. Like I explained before, you don't need to be too weary about setting it to live, even if you're not ready to launch the product right away, because ultimately, until you share that link that we generated together, nobody's going to accidentally find themselves on this page unless you've left that link somewhere for people to find. So keeping it in live mode, I always recommend. Go ahead and click save and get URL once you're done. And now you can actually run a proper test using and testing your payment processor. So that's actually what I recommend doing. You can always test it on test mode just to see all of the different steps and the pages that your customers are going to see. But ultimately, testing it when it's on live mode is going to be the most logical thing that you can do to make sure that there's not going to be any hiccups when it comes to processing payments, using coupons, things like that, when you actually take this product to market.